What if everything you've been told about fitting in, about being normal, is actually the very thing holding you captive? What if the constant nagging feeling that something is wrong, not with you, but with your life, isn't a flaw but a profound signal? Stay with me, because by the end of this, you'll understand why Carl Jung believed that the very traits society discourages might be the key to unlocking your authentic purpose and escaping the silent cage you've unknowingly built. Carl Jung once said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." But what if who you truly are is so radically different from the life you're living that the disparity is causing immense psychological distress? What if your deep sensitivity, your relentless curiosity, your refusal to accept superficial answers aren't flaws to be fixed, but vital signs of a profound psychological type yearning to break free? If you've ever felt like an outsider in your own skin, if people have called you too much or too complicated in a judgmental tone, this isn't coincidence. According to Carl Jung's groundbreaking research into personality types, some individuals possess what he called differentiated consciousness, a way of experiencing reality that most people never fully develop. Here's what's fascinating and also heartbreaking. Jung discovered that these individuals, far from being rare personalities to be celebrated by others, often go through their entire lives thinking something is fundamentally wrong with them when, in reality, they're operating at a level of psychological sophistication that's genuinely uncommon. But there's a profound catch, a silent trap, and I'll reveal what that is in just a moment. Today, we're exploring 8 unmistakable signs that you are currently trapped in a life that isn't truly yours. If you recognize yourself in these patterns, it won't just change how you see your past. It might just be the map that revolutionizes your entire future, guiding you to liberation. But first, let me ask you something. Have you ever noticed that your emotional reactions seem disproportionate to what others experience? There's a psychological reason for this that Jung uncovered, and it's not what you think. It's not a weakness. It's a profound sensitivity that, when unacknowledged or suppressed, can make you feel utterly alien in your own skin. Sign 1. You experience emotional depth that others can't comprehend, leading to a sense of isolation. Carl Jung discovered something remarkable about emotional intensity. He found that certain individuals don't just feel emotions. They experience what he called affect-tone complexes that create profound psychological resonance. In simple terms, you don't just have feelings. Feelings move through you like ocean currents, deep, transformative, and often overwhelming in a world built for shallow ripples. Here's what Jung realized that most people miss. This isn't emotional instability. It's emotional sophistication. But why does society try to convince you otherwise? Why are you told to tone it down, to get over it, to stop being so dramatic? When you feel deeply, you're not overreacting. You're accessing layers of psychological experience that most people have learned to suppress. Jung said, "Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves." Your emotional intensity isn't a burden, but if you're trapped in a life that doesn't honor it, it becomes one. It's a form of psychological radar that detects what others can't see. You feel the unspoken tension in rooms. You sense when someone's smile doesn't match their eyes. You carry the emotional undercurrents of every interaction because your psyche is wired for depth, not surface-level pleasantries. Here's where it gets interesting, and where most people with this trait make a critical mistake that keeps them stuck. The world tells you to tone it down, to be more reasonable, to stop making everything so dramatic. But Jung understood that when you suppress this emotional depth, you don't become normal. You become neurotic. You start experiencing what he called psychological splitting, where part of you knows the truth while another part desperately tries to conform. This is why you've probably felt utterly exhausted trying to be someone you're not. You're living a life that constantly tells your deepest self that it's wrong, too much, or fundamentally broken. But what if I told you that Jung discovered a way to transform this emotional intensity from a crushing burden into your greatest strength? A compass to guide you out of the life that's not yours. I'll share that technique in sign number 6. Sign 2. You question everything with unrelenting curiosity, feeling out of step with a complacent world. According to Carl Jung, most people live what he called unconscious lives. They accept social programming without examination. They absorb narratives without critical thought. But you can't help but dig deeper. You are constantly asking why, not just what. Jung would have recognized you as someone with an active thinking function that refuses to accept surface explanations. Here's what's crucial. Jung discovered that people who question everything aren't being difficult. They're being psychologically honest. But there's a hidden cost to this honesty that most people don't realize until it's too late. A cost that often keeps you trapped. You don't just ask what, you ask. Why do people stay in relationships that make them miserable? Why do we accept systems that don't truly serve us? Why do we pretend that shallow conversations are meaningful connection? Your mind is constantly seeking truth beneath appearances. Jung called this the transcendent function, the psychological ability to see beyond current limitations. While others accept the status quo, you're already envisioning what could be different, what could be better, what could be more authentic. But here's the paradox Jung identified. The more clearly you see, the more isolated you can become. Why? Because your questions threaten other people's comfortable illusions. When you ask deep questions, you're not just seeking answers. You're challenging the psychological defenses that keep people feeling safe in their limitations. This is why you've probably been called cynical or negative when you're actually being courageously honest. You see the cracks in the facade, and when you point them out, you disrupt the illusion of stability for others. Jung discovered something fascinating about people like you. You have what he called prophetic consciousness. You see where things are heading before others do. This isn't a party trick. It's a profound intuitive ability. But this gift comes with a profound responsibility, a responsibility that can feel like a heavy burden when you're in a life that denies your foresight. I'll reveal what that responsibility is in the final sign, and it might surprise you how it can lead you out of your current trap. Sign 3. You've developed fierce independence as psychological survival, which can paradoxically leave you feeling alone. Carl Jung said, "The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely." You've learned to do exactly this, not always by conscious choice, but often by necessity, as a means of psychological survival in a world that didn't understand you. According to Jung's research, people with rare personalities, or those prone to living an unlived life, often develop what he called individuated consciousness earlier than others, usually through adversity. Here's what Jung understood that most therapists miss. Your independence isn't a defensive mechanism. It's an achievement. It's a testament to your resilience. But society will try to convince you it's a problem, that you're too independent, unwilling to compromise, or difficult to get close to. And here's why that's dangerous. It traps you in a narrative that your strength is a weakness. You've learned through painful experience that depending on others for your sense of worth is psychological quicksand. So you built yourself. You stood up, often alone, and created an identity that couldn't be taken away by someone else's opinion or absence. Jung called this process individuation, the psychological journey toward becoming whole. Most people never truly complete this journey because it requires facing what Jung termed the shadow, all the parts of yourself you've been taught to reject. But here's where it gets complex, and where your independence can become a trap. Your fierce independence attracts people who want to possess it and repels people who feel threatened by it. Jung identified a specific pattern in how independent personalities navigate relationships. And understanding this pattern changes everything, freeing you from unhealthy dynamics. You don't need someone to complete you because you've done the psychological work of becoming complete. This means you don't seek relationships from desperation. You seek them from choice. You don't want someone to save you. You want someone to stand beside you as you both continue growing. Jung discovered something profound about people who achieve true independence. They become magnets for both authentic love and manipulative control. The key is knowing the difference, a crucial skill for escaping relationships that trap you. I'll show you Jung's method for identifying this in sign number 7. Your solitude isn't loneliness. It's sanctuary. It's where you remember who you are beneath all the roles and expectations. And that self-knowledge, Jung said, is the foundation of all psychological health. But if your life doesn't allow for this sanctuary, you are truly trapped. Sign 4. You possess intuitive awareness that borders on psychic, leading to overwhelm and a need for firm boundaries. Carl Jung revolutionized psychology when he identified intuition as a legitimate psychological function. He said, "Intuition is perception by the unconscious that brings forth ideas, images, possibilities, ways out of a block situation by a process that is mostly unconscious." Here's what Jung discovered that science is only now proving. Some people's nervous systems are wired to pick up information that others miss entirely. This isn't woo-woo. It's a heightened sensitivity to subtle cues, energetic shifts, and unspoken truths. But this gift comes with a profound burden that can destroy relationships and trap you in an exhausting cycle if you don't understand how to manage it. You don't just observe people, you read their psychological state. You notice the micro-expressions, the energy shifts, the words they don't say. Jung would have recognized this as evidence of what he called active imagination, the ability to perceive beyond the obvious. When someone says they're fine, but their body language screams distress, you can't unsee it. When there's tension in a room that everyone else seems to ignore, you feel it in your bones. This isn't paranoia. It's psychological sensitivity operating at a high level. But here's Jung's warning, a critical insight if you're to escape the trap of constant overwhelm. If you don't learn to protect this sensitivity, it will exhaust you. You will become a sponge for everyone else's emotional chaos, leaving you drained and depleted. He identified a specific technique that allows intuitive people to maintain their awareness without absorbing everyone else's psychological chaos. According to Jung, people with strong intuitive function often become unconscious therapists. They end up doing emotional labor for everyone around them. You regulate conversations, diffuse tension, and carry unspoken pain because you can't help but perceive it. Jung made a startling discovery about intuitive personalities. They often lose themselves in the process of understanding others. There's a specific psychological trap that catches almost everyone with this trait, and recognizing it is crucial for your well-being. The danger is that you become so skilled at reading others that you forget to check in with yourself. You become externally focused, constantly scanning for emotional data while your own needs go unmet and unexpressed. This is how you become trapped in a life that constantly serves others, but never truly serves you. But when Jung worked with highly intuitive individuals, he found they could transform this sensitivity from a burden into a superpower. The secret lies in understanding what he called psychological boundaries. And I'll reveal this crucial technique, essential for freeing you from the energetic drain, in just a moment. Sign 5. You crave meaning over social acceptance, which makes conforming to superficial expectations unbearable. Carl Jung observed, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. But what if being true to yourself means rejecting everything society tells you to want, everything that promises happiness, but leaves you feeling hollow?" Jung discovered that certain personalities are psychologically incapable of living inauthentic lives. To do so is to live a life that is not yours, a life of silent suffering. Here's what Jung realized about people like you. You don't choose meaning over popularity. Your psyche demands it. It's not a preference. It's a fundamental psychological necessity. But this creates a specific type of psychological conflict that can be devastating if you don't understand what's happening. A conflict that often leaves you feeling trapped and deeply unhappy. You've probably tried living for external validation. Maybe you followed the script, said the right things, played the expected role. You chased the promotions, the perfect relationships, the material possessions that were supposed to signal success. But Jung would have recognized the symptoms immediately. That gnawing emptiness, that sense of betraying something essential, that quiet desperation beneath the applause. According to Jung, when you live against your psychological type, you don't just feel uncomfortable. You develop what he called neurotic symptoms. Your psyche literally rebels against inauthenticity. It's your soul screaming for liberation from a life that isn't yours. Jung made a disturbing discovery. Most people never experience genuine meaning because they're too afraid of social rejection. They are content to be trapped in the comfortable illusion of fitting in. But people like you face a different challenge, one that's both harder and, ultimately, far more rewarding. You can't pretend that shallow goals matter. You can't get excited about achievements that lack substance. You can't build relationships based on convenience rather than genuine connection. Your psychological makeup simply won't allow it. This is why you've probably felt like an alien in your own culture, trapped by its superficiality. But Jung identified something remarkable about people who prioritize meaning. They become evolutionary catalysts for human consciousness. When you refuse to settle for less than authentic connection, you force others to confront their own inauthenticity. When you ask the questions others avoid, you create space for truth. When you live according to your values rather than your fears, you give others permission to do the same. You become a beacon of freedom for those still trapped. But here's Jung's most important insight about meaning-driven personalities. You have a psychological responsibility that goes beyond personal fulfillment. It's a responsibility that, when ignored, leaves you feeling profoundly unmoored and trapped in a sense of aimlessness. I'll reveal what that responsibility is in the final sign, and it might change how you see your entire life purpose and how you can break free. Sign 6. You've outgrown people and environments that once fit, leading to a profound sense of grief and isolation. Carl Jung said the greatest tragedy of the family is the unlived lives of the parents. But what happens when you refuse to live an unlived life? What happens when you grow beyond the psychological limitations of your environment, the expectations of your family, the narrow definitions of your past? This isn't a sign of being broken. It's a sign of profound, necessary evolution, but it can leave you feeling deeply, painfully trapped by your own growth. Jung discovered something profound about psychological growth. It's often a solitary journey, and there's a specific type of grief that comes with this evolution. And understanding this grief is crucial for your continued development and for understanding why you feel so disconnected from your old life. You've likely experienced a painful realization that people who once knew you don't anymore, not because you've become difficult or superior, but because you've shed layers of conditioning that no longer serve you. You are no longer the person who fit neatly into that box. Jung called this process psychological death and rebirth. It's a necessary shedding of the old self to allow for the new. Here's what most people don't understand about outgrowing relationships and environments. It's not a choice you make. It's a consequence of becoming authentic. It's a natural outcome of refusing to be trapped. But Jung identified a way to navigate this transition that honors both your growth and your past connections, even as they inevitably shift or fade. The friends who knew you when you were shrinking, when you were people-pleasing, when you were suppressing your truth, they remember that version of you. And sometimes they want that version back because it felt safer, more predictable, easier to understand. It didn't challenge their own comfortable illusions. But you can't go back. Jung understood that psychological evolution is irreversible. Once you've seen behind the curtain of social conditioning, once you've tasted authentic living, you can't return to unconscious conformity. The trap of the familiar becomes unbearable once you know what true freedom feels like. Jung made a startling observation about people who outgrow their environments. They often experience what he called the dark night of the soul, a period of profound loneliness that tests their commitment to authenticity. This isn't ordinary loneliness. It's existential isolation. It's the recognition that your path is unique, that your perspective is rare, that your growth might mean leaving behind everything familiar. This is the ultimate test of whether you will remain trapped by comfort or bravely step into the unknown. But Jung discovered something beautiful about people who successfully navigate this transition. They attract relationships of extraordinary depth and authenticity. The key is understanding his concept of psychological resonance. How authentic people find each other, how they recognize each other through the static of a superficial world. When you stop performing and start being, when you stop shrinking and start expanding, when you stop apologizing for your depth and start owning it, something shifts in your entire relational field. You send out a new signal, attracting those who are meant to walk with you on your authentic path, freeing you from the desperate need to fit where you no longer belong. Sign 7. You offer profound presence in a distracted world, often to your own detriment, feeling unseen yourself. According to Carl Jung, the meeting of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances. If there is any reaction, both are transformed. But what if you're the type of person who creates transformation simply by showing up authentically, by holding space, by being truly present? What if this profound ability is simultaneously your greatest gift and a trap that drains you dry? Jung identified a rare quality that some people possess, the ability to create what he called psychological holding space. If you have this gift, you already know how much it costs you, the sheer energetic output required. But you might not realize how rare and valuable it truly is, or how easily it can lead you to feel trapped by the needs of others. When someone speaks to you, they feel seen in a way that's uncommon. You don't just listen to their words. You perceive their underlying emotional state. You don't offer quick fixes. You offer deep witnessing. You don't rush to judgment. You create space for truth to emerge. Jung understood that this level of presence is actually a form of psychological healing. In your company, people remember what it feels like to be human, complex, contradictory, worthy of understanding. But here's Jung's crucial insight, a warning for those feeling trapped by this immense capacity. People with this gift often exhaust themselves by giving it too freely. You become a psychological dumping ground, a bottomless well for others' needs. He identified specific psychological boundaries that allow empathetic people to maintain their depth without depleting themselves, boundaries that are essential for you to escape the trap of constant self-sacrifice. You've probably found yourself in the role of unofficial therapist, emotional anchor, or safe harbor for others. While this makes you invaluable, it can also make you invisible. You become so skilled at holding space for others that you forget to ask for space to be held yourself. This is a profound trap. The more you give, the less you receive, until you are running on empty, fueling everyone else's life but your own. Jung discovered something important about highly empathetic personalities. They often develop what he called helper syndrome, a pattern of unconscious self-sacrifice that ultimately serves no one, including yourself. The work isn't to stop caring or to close your heart. The work is to learn discernment, to understand who deserves access to your emotional presence and who has earned the right to reciprocate. When Jung worked with people who possessed natural therapeutic presence, he found they needed to learn a specific skill that transformed their relationships entirely and liberated them from this self-sacrificing trap. I'll share this skill in the final sign because it's the key to maintaining your gifts without losing yourself. It's the skill of conscious reciprocity. Sign 8. You sense a larger purpose that you can't yet define, and ignoring it is the ultimate trap. Carl Jung said, "Your vision becomes clear when you look into your heart. Who looks outside dreams. Who looks inside awakens." If you felt a persistent sense that you're meant for something more than the ordinary, that you are destined for a life beyond what you currently inhabit, Jung would have recognized this as what he called the transcendent function, your psyche's relentless drive toward individuation and purpose. This isn't grandiosity. It's an undeniable inner compass, and ignoring it is the most suffocating trap of all. Here's what Jung discovered about people with an undefined but urgent purpose. They're not delusional or grandiose. They're responding to what he called an archetypal calling. It's a deep, primal summons from the core of your being. But there's a specific way this calling can become distorted and feel like a trap. When you chase external definitions of purpose instead of listening to your inner guidance. You've felt it. That restless knowing that you have something profound to contribute, something to build, something to say. It might not be clear yet, but it's undeniable. Jung understood this as evidence of what he called creative potential-seeking expression. This isn't about fame or recognition. It's about alignment, the psychological necessity of living in harmony with your deepest nature. Jung found that people who ignore this calling often develop what he termed neurotic symptoms: anxiety, depression, a pervasive sense of meaninglessness. This is the soul's cry when it's trapped in a life that denies its purpose. You become a shell of yourself, endlessly searching for a fulfillment that can only come from within. But here's Jung's most profound insight about purpose-driven personalities, the key to unlocking yourself from the ultimate trap. Your calling isn't just personal, it's transpersonal. You're not just here to fulfill yourself. You're here to serve the evolution of consciousness itself. Jung believed that individuals with rare personalities serve as bridges between the unconscious and conscious realms of human experience. Through your depth, your questions, your refusal to accept shallow answers, you help humanity grow. This is why you can't settle for ordinary. This is why surface-level connections feel empty. This is why you'd rather be alone than pretend. Your psyche knows you have work to do, and that work requires authenticity, depth, and courage. It requires you to step out of the life that's not yours and into the life you were meant to live. But Jung also warned about the inflation that can come with recognizing your profound purpose. The key is holding both humility and power, understanding that you're special without believing you're superior. You are a vessel for something larger than yourself. Carl Jung spent his entire career studying personalities like yours. He called people with these traits the differentiated individuals, those who have developed psychological complexity that allows them to see, feel, and understand at levels most people never reach. If even half of these signs resonated with you, you're not just different. You're part of what Jung called the leading edge of human consciousness. You're one of the people pushing our species toward greater awareness, deeper truth, more authentic connection. Yes, it's lonely sometimes. Yes, it's misunderstood. Yes, it requires more courage than most people will ever need. But Jung believed that people like you are essential for humanity's psychological evolution. Your sensitivity isn't a weakness. It's a superpower that helps you perceive the subtle cues that signal when you are trapped. Your intensity isn't too much. It's exactly what the world needs to be shaken out of its complacency. Your refusal to settle isn't difficult. It's brave, an act of rebellion against the unlived life. Carl Jung once said, "The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely." You're learning to do exactly that, to shed the life that was never truly yours, and in doing so, you're giving others permission to do the same. Drop a comment below and tell me which of these signs felt most true to you, which one resonated with that feeling of being trapped. Share this with someone who needs to remember their own psychological rarity and the path to their freedom. And subscribe to Inner Space, because we're just beginning to explore the depths of what makes you extraordinary and how to live a life that is truly, vibrantly yours. Remember, you're not too much. The world is too little for the depth and authenticity you embody. And Jung knew that people like you are the ones who change that.